Hello everyone, welcome to Learn DAX channel. My name is Siddesh and this is the part 4 of the end-to-end project video series in which we are covering a bunch of business problems and then converting them into DAX queries. If you haven't watched the first three parts, I would really encourage you to go ahead and watch those videos. I will leave the link in the description. So for today's video, we have the following questions and let's start with it. So for the first question, we are going to solve calculate the percentage of late shipments where the delivery time exceeds 2 days for each supplier. Now we are going to calculate this percentage of late shipments in two different ways. We are going to see the output in two different forms. So let's start by creating a measure. But before that, let's take a look at the shipments table and just try and understand what we are going to calculate and how we're going to calculate that. So I go to the shipments table in my table view. So I see a bunch of columns here like shipment ID, order ID, shipment date, actual delivery date, delivery days, etc. So that the thing that we're interested in this particular question is the delivery days. We already have the delivery days in our table. So wherever the delivery days is going to exceed 2, that is going to be counted as late shipment. So if I quickly create this or use this filter to select the shipments which have exceeded 2 days, I see that there are a bunch of values which have delivery dates which exceeds 2 days. So I just want to take the count of those values and in the context of each supplier, the number of times that this has occurred and then calculate the percentage. So let me clear this filter and let's go to the report view and create a new measure. So in my first instance, I'm going to calculate the percentage of late shipments in the context of overall shipments. So for example, if I have 50 shipments overall across all suppliers, and if supplier A has defaulted or he has delivered 5 shipments late in overall 50 shipments across all suppliers, it is going to count as 5 divided by 50, which accounts to 10% of late shipments. And in the second use case scenario, I'm going to calculate the percentage of late shipments in the context of each supplier. So in case there is supplier A which has done 10 shipments, and should it have defaulted on 2 shipments out of 10, in that case, even though overall it would have a different number in terms of the late shipments, but in the context of supplier A, since on 8 occasions it has delivered on time out of 10, and on 2 occasions it has delivered late, so it will count as 20%. So we are going to view both these results by slightly tweaking the measures. So first thing I'm going to calculate in the overall context of all the shipments. So I'll calculate late shipments overall is equal to, I will use a variable. I will call it late or total shipments overall is equal to count rows. Now, instead of simply supplying the table as shipments, I'm going to use the all function because here we want to negate the inherent filter context that will be brought upon whenever we are going to pull the supplier name in our table. So I will use all shipments and then close the bracket. The second variable will be late shipments overall, and that will amount to count rows shipments such that shipment delivery days exceeds 2 because those are counted as late deliveries. And I'm going to return the division of late shipments overall to total shipments overall. And should there be a 0 by 0 situation, I'll return 0. I'll multiply it by 100 so that I get the percentage. Now this will give me the percentage of late shipments in the overall context. Now I want to view the same thing in the context of a particular supplier. So the only thing that I'm going to change in this formula is I'm going to remove this all. So instead of typing the whole formula again, I'll just copy and paste and create a new measure. So I will copy this. I will create a new measure And I'll just change a few things. Instead of late shipments, I will call it late shipments supplier. Instead of all, I'll remove that. I'll keep it as it is. We don't need this extra bracket. And late shipments, I will also change the name of the variables. Late shipments supplier, overall shipments supplier. And so this thing changes as well. I have late shipment supplier and total shipment supplier. So now I will pull the supplier name in a table, and I will pull one by one the measure, which is the late shipment supplier and the late shipment overall. Now let's understand why I'm getting 60% here and 6% here. So we are going to select the active supplies supplier. So in order to get the supplier ID, I'll just pull the supplier ID in this table, and I can see that the supplier ID for active supplies is 5. So I go back to my shipments table and I filter for the supplier ID 5. I click OK. So if I consider this particular column, I see that on 1, 2, and 3 occasions it has delivered late, greater than 2 days. So across 5 shipments for this particular supplier, on 3 occasions it has supplied late. So if I pull out my calculator, it amounts to 3 instances of late delivery for overall 5 deliveries. When I multiply that by 100, I get 60% of the time it has delivered late. But in the overall context of all the shipments across all suppliers, the total number of shipments are 50. So if I clear this filter and I again pull the calculator, I should get 3 divided by 50. So this is across all suppliers, across all shipments into 100. So I'm getting 6. So let's go back and verify that for active supplies, the late shipments for this supplier in the context of the supplier is 60, because out of 5 shipments, it has delayed on 3, which amounts to 60%. And in case of the overall shipments, which are 50, it has delayed on 3. So overall delays across all shipments is 6%. And for this particular supplier, the percentage of late shipments is 60%. And that's what we have calculated for all the suppliers. Like for example, the Apex Sport supply has 75% of the times supplied late, but it accounts to 12% of the late shipments overall. So that solves the first question. Now let's move on to the second question. In the second question, we have to calculate the sales amount for the most recent order for each product. So let's go to our products table and let's try and understand what exactly the problem statement is. So I have these products and there are orders that have been placed for these products on certain dates. So if I change this to an order date instead of an hierarchy, and also let me get the sales amount. So if I consider, let's say, 3 products, um, Apex Yoga Mat, Avalanche Snowboard, and Blaze Soccer Ball. So what I'm seeing here is the Apex Yoga Mat was sold on 3 different occasions. It was ordered on 9th of July, 18th of July, and 29th of July. And my question says that get the order amount for the latest sale. So if I go back to my PPT, I see that I've got to find out the sales amount for the most recent order. So in the context of my Apex Yoga Mat, the most recent order happens to be on 29th of July, and I need to find the sales amount for that order. Again, if I consider the Avalanche Snowboard, the most recent order happens to be on 16th of July, and the order amount happens to be 2,750. Again, for the Blaze Soccer Ball, the most recent order happens to be on 26th of July, and the order amount happens to be 320. So this is what I want to see in a table. So I will create a new table for that. I will use the summarize function. So I create a new table. I will call it latest order amount. Yeah, I can call it latest order amount. So I'll use the summarize function. So we need to summarize the products table such that I get to see the product ID, the product name. Now, the first thing that we need here is that I want to get the order date, which happens to be the maximum of order date, which gives me the latest order date. So for that, I will use order date will be calculate the max order date. Now I am going to calculate the max order date, but how is it going to calculate the max order date? Like we have calculate expression and filter. So the max order date should be such that when I'm iterating over this particular column, that it has to give me the max order date. So the condition is going to be order date such that it should be the max of order date. While it might seem redundant that we have already mentioned the maximum here, then why are we still giving this filter expression? Actually, we can get rid of it because this is just an expression, but we are going to keep it for our understanding. So now the second thing I want is the sales amount. I think we missed a comma somewhere. Yeah, here. So I need to calculate the max sales amount, max sales order sales amount, such that the order date happens to be the max order date. So what I'm trying to tell Power BI here is get me the max order date such that order date is the max order date and get the sales amount corresponding where the order date happens to be the maximum of order date. Now, this condition essentially gives me the order date corresponding to the latest order date. Now, okay, that part is taken care of. Why do I need to mention max here? Why can't I simply use just the sales amount? Why I need to use max? Because we are using summarize function. We are grouping by something. And when we are grouping by something, we need to aggregate those values. So, which is why we are using the max function. In case we want to find the minimum, we will use the minimum. In case we want to find the average, we will use the average. And there can also be an instance wherein on the 29th of July, the Apex Yoga mat has had three different orders, three different sales amount. It could be 250, 300, and 350. So in that case, Power BI is not going to, it will get confused, like which sales amount should I return to the user if there are three sales amount for one order date. So which is why we are going to use a max to remove that ambiguity. So once that is done, I'll hit enter and then I will pull this table onto this visual and let's just see if we have, let's just verify if our output is correct. So I'll pull out the product name. I also need the order date and I need the sales amount. So I'll change this to an order date. I'll also change its setting so that it's a short date formatting actually. And I want to verify it for Apex Yoga Mat, Avalanche Snowboard, and Play Soccer Ball. So Apex Yoga Mat, Avalanche Snowboard, and Play Soccer Ball. So I'll just keep this side to side and we can clearly see that for Apex Yoga Mat, the latest order date happens to be 29th of July, which is evident here, and the sales amount corresponding has is 250 rupees. Again, for Avalanche Snowboard, the latest order date happens to be 16th of July, which you can see in this table, and the max sales amount happens to be 2750. Again, for Blaze Soccer Ball, 26th of July is the latest order date with sales amount happening to be 320, and if I check here, 26th of July and 320. So we are done with that. We have solved the second question as well. Now let's head to the third and final question for this video. So in this, we have to calculate the average order value for the top 5 suppliers by the total purchase amount. So what do we do in that case? So we basically use a summarize function, and in order to get the top 5 suppliers, we are going to use the top n function, and then we are going to use another column which is going to give us the average value. So let's start by creating a new table. Let's start by creating a new table. I will call it average top 5 suppliers is equal to summarize. Um, I need the products. Suppliers, actually, I need the suppliers. So suppliers, let's go with supplier ID. I'll also need supplier name. Now I want the total sales amount, or I'll just call it the sales amount because this can have a different meaning. Total sales amount. I just want the sales amount for each supplier, and I can get it from orders, sumx orders, such that orders, I can simply use the sales amount. I don't have to do the calculation again. And if I hit enter, I should get the sales amount corresponding to each supplier. So where do I have it? I have the supplier name. I think this is from a different table. I'll just go back to this table. So supplier name and corresponding sales amount. So this is something that we have already verified in previous of our videos. I guess we have this here. See, if I copy this, we have already verified that the sales amount that we have calculated is correct. Now what I want is, I also want the average order value. Now that will be average of orders, such that orders sales amount. And if I pull it here, I should get the average order value. So the average order value for active supplies is 906. Now what I want is, I want it for the top 5 suppliers based on the total purchase amount. So our sorting is going to be based on the total purchase amount or the total sales amount. So I will have to wrap this inside a top n function. I will mention top 5, and it has to be sorted on the basis of my sales amount, and it has to be sorted in descending order. I missed giving an enter. Yeah. Now if I go back and I see that I have the top 5 suppliers based on the sales amount and the average order value for each of those sales amount. Now if you want to verify this, I can also maybe use the sales amount again here, and I can use an aggregation, show value as, okay, in this case I cannot see an aggregation. This is coming from the supplies table and this is the sales amount. What if I get the orders sales amount? Can I aggregate that? Yes, I can aggregate this. And if I want the top 5 values, such that supplier name top n based on the sales amount, top 5, apply filter, sort this by sales amount. So yeah, we have verified that. So when I use the drag and drop functionality of Power BI, I could verify that the average order value for the highest sales is for the supplier TechFit, and it is 8,927.50. For the second most top selling supplier, which is Bike Pro, the sales amount happens to be 31,250 and the average sales amount happens to be 6,250. So yeah, we have verified that using our drag and drop. And this brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And please leave your thoughts in the comments. And like I say at the end of every video, thanks for watching and happy learning.